Smash that subscribe button if you think you're ready to step inside the place where sunlight is a rumor and silence is a weapon. Welcome to Pelican Bay's Security Housing Unit, the SHU. But before we go any further, remember, some doors shouldn't be opened, and today, we're opening one anyway. The story begins at 5:46 a.m., long before the correctional officer's boots echoed down Seapod. A fog bank clung to the razor wire outside, rolling in from the California coast like a gray tide. Inside, the air was colder than the concrete. In cell 212, an inmate who shouldn't have been able to die, at least not the way he did, lay motionless on the floor. His name was Rafael Ghost Mendez, a shot caller with enough influence to make entire tiers go quiet when he walked past. He'd survived riots, stabbings, lockdowns, and more time in solitary than most minds could handle. But that morning, the man feared by hundreds was found with no pulse, no visible injuries, and no sign of struggle. Just a thin line of blood under the door, a line too straight, too clean, too deliberate to be natural. Officer Keller was the first to see it. He froze in the hallway, staring down at that crimson thread like it was pointing at him. Keller had only been at Pelican Bay for 8 months, still young enough to believe he could stay untouched by the things that went on in the SHU. But as he radioed it in, his voice cracked because something about this wasn't right. The emergency response team arrived within minutes. Cameras rolled. The logbooks were pulled. The cell door slid open with a metallic grunt. Ghost lay on his back, eyes wide, as if he'd seen something in his final seconds, something he didn't expect. No weapon, no ligature, no forced entry. And since he was in the SHU, contact with other inmates was impossible. Supposedly, that word, supposedly, would become the heart of the investigation. Detective Leah Rowan, from Del Norte County, was called in before Ghost's body even reached the coroner's van. Rowan had a reputation: sharp, methodical, unshakable. She walked into Pelican Bay like she'd been there before, as if the cold didn't bother her, as if the rumors didn't reach her. Everyone at the prison knew the stories: inmates communicating between air vents, coded messages smuggled through laundry, guards who looked the other way when the price was right. But this was different. Rowan crouched beside the cell door, studying that clean red line. "This wasn't leakage," she murmured. "Someone placed it here." Keller swallowed hard. But that's impossible. He was alone, all night. Rowan didn't look up. Every crime scene tells a story, even in a place built to keep stories buried. The autopsy later revealed something even stranger. Ghost's hyoid bone, a small, delicate bone at the base of the throat, was fractured. A fracture consistent with manual strangulation. But again, no one had entered the cell. According to the logs, the last person to see him alive was Officer Keller during hourly rounds. And Keller had an alibi backed by both video and 3 other officers. The SHU was supposed to be airtight. But someone had found a crack. Rowan began interviewing staff, starting with Keller. He told her the rounds were normal. Nothing unusual. No disturbances. No sounds from Ghost's cell. But Rowan noticed something. Keller's hands trembled every time she asked about the overnight shift. Not guilt. Not fear. Something else. Something deeper. "Officer Keller," she asked quietly, "did Ghost ever say anything to you? Anything that made you think he was expecting trouble?" Keller hesitated. A long, heavy silence filled the room. "Last week," he finally said, "he told me. They're coming for me, but not through the door. I thought he was just losing it from the isolation." Rowan leaned forward. "Did he say who they were?"
He didn't.
He just kept repeating, 'Tell them the walls are lying.' It didn't make sense. Until Rowan reviewed the footage from the tier. At 2:13 a.m., the hallway outside cell 212 went pitch black for exactly 4 seconds. Not a flicker. Not a camera malfunction. A complete blackout. When the lights snapped back on, Ghost was still alive, but something had changed. He was facing the door, standing perfectly still, as if waiting for something or someone. The electricians claimed no outages had been reported. Administration insisted the cameras were functioning normally. But Rowan had worked enough cases to know when she was being fed pieces instead of the whole puzzle. The deeper she pushed, the stranger things became. Other inmates whispered things through the gaps under their doors, not quite loud enough to be statements, but loud enough to be warnings. Ghost had it coming. Shouldn't have talked. Should have kept his mouth shut. But none of them explained what he talked about, or to whom. Then came the first anonymous note. It appeared in Rowan's case file, placed neatly between the autopsy report and Ghost's disciplinary history. No fingerprints. No handwriting to compare. Just a single line written in black ink. Check the vent. Rowan returned to cell 212 that evening, the pod dim and quiet. She climbed onto the metal bunk and inspected the air vent. It looked like every other vent in the SHU, steel, bolted, unmoving. But then she saw it. A scratch mark. Tiny, barely visible, but unmistakably fresh. She pried open the cover. Behind it wasn't dust, or mold, or old contraband. It was a strip of audio tape. A fragment only a few inches long, curled like a dying leaf. Rowan's pulse quickened. She held it under the light. Someone had written 2 words on the tape in faded marker. Help me. But Ghost hadn't been the one to write it. The handwriting was too small, too cramped, too rushed. And the vent was too deep for him to reach from inside the cell. Which meant someone else had been using the ventilation system. Someone who knew the prison layout better than any inmate. Someone who moved unseen. Rowan turned back to the vent, shining her flashlight deeper into the darkness, and that's when she saw it, tucked just beyond reach, wedged into the ductwork. A torn piece of a correctional officer's uniform sleeve. And the blood on the fabric? Still fresh. But when Rowan pulled it free and turned it over, what she found stitched on the inside label made her breath catch. It was a name she knew. A name that should not have been anywhere near Ghost's cell. A name that made the entire investigation explode in a new direction. Officer Keller. And that was the moment Rowan realized this wasn't an inmate conspiracy. This was coming from inside the staff. Officer Keller's name burned against the inside label like a warning stitched in blood. Detective Leah Rowan stared at the torn fabric, feeling the cold weight of the SHU settle deeper into her bones. Everything she thought she understood about the case, Ghost, the vent, the blackout, pivoted in an instant. Keller wasn't just a nervous rookie anymore. He was now the only direct link between the cell, the scene, and the impossible timeline of Ghost Mendez's death. But Rowan didn't accuse him. Not yet. She'd worked too many cases where the obvious suspect wasn't the right one, where the setup was cleaner than the truth. And this setup? It was surgical. Almost too perfect. She secured the evidence and stepped into the hallway. The air felt tighter. The lights hummed overhead. Every camera lens suddenly looked like an eye, watching her, waiting. When she reached the officer's station, Keller was sitting at the desk, hunched over incident reports. He looked up, startled. Rowan noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the pallor of someone who hadn't slept, or didn't feel safe enough to try. Keller, she said calmly, I need you to come with me. His throat bobbed. Why? What's going on? Because, she answered, lowering her voice, if someone is trying to frame you, we don't have much time to figure out who. His eyes widened, but not with guilt, with absolute terror. He stood stiffly, palms sweating. Detective, I didn't do anything. I swear. I didn't go near that cell after my round. Then you need to help me understand why a piece of your uniform was inside Ghost's vent. The color drained from his face. What? Rowan held the fabric behind her back. She wasn't ready for him to see it yet. Is your uniform intact? Yes, I think so. I didn't check every stitch. Then we check now. They walked to the locker room. Keller opened his locker with trembling hands. On the hook hung 2 spare uniform shirts, both folded, both perfectly intact. No tears. No missing sleeves. Rowan said nothing. Her mind was already turning. Keller, she asked, how many uniforms have you been issued since you started here?
4, he said.
2 new, 2 used. Used, that was unusual. SHU policy was strict. No pre-owned gear for new officers. Used? Who gave those to you? Keller swallowed. Lieutenant Grayson. Said supply was backed up. He told me to make do. Rowan nodded slowly. She knew Grayson. 25 years at Pelican Bay. A reputation for running the SHU like a kingdom, one he ruled without oversight. Men like him didn't lose track of uniforms. Nothing got misplaced on his watch, which meant the torn sleeve wasn't Keller's at all. It had been planted, placed into circulation weeks earlier, long before Ghost died. Someone wanted Keller implicated before the crime even happened. Rowan's gut tightened. Keller, I'm going to ask you something, and I need the truth. He nodded. Has Grayson ever mentioned Ghost to you? Ever asked you to keep tabs on him?
Keller hesitated.
That hesitation told her everything before he spoke. He told me Ghost was a problem, that I should report anything unusual, but I never saw anything. Ghost mostly kept to himself, you know? Read. Worked out. Never talked. Rowan leaned in. Did Grayson ask you the same thing about anyone else? Yes, Keller whispered. About Officer Bram. Rowan froze. Officer Daniel Bram had been missing for 6 months. Staff said he quit. Family said he disappeared. No one filed a missing persons report until his sister forced an investigation. Pelican Bay claimed no involvement. No leads ever surfaced. But now there was a missing officer and a dead inmate, and both names tied back to the same man, Grayson. Rowan felt the case widening around her. Layers folding into layers. A system that wasn't just broken, it was actively burying its own secrets. She stepped out of the locker room, letting Keller breathe. Her phone buzzed. The coroner. Detective Rowan, he said, voice crackling through static. You asked me to recheck Ghost Mendez's fingernails.
Yes.
Anything? A pause. You need to see this yourself. That tone. She knew it. Something big. Rowan headed to the county morgue. Ghost's body lay under a sheet, lit by a single overhead lamp. The coroner lifted his glasses. We found skin cells under 2 nails. Male. Not a match to Mendez. And there's something else. He handed her a small evidence bag. Inside was a sliver of plastic, curved, milky white, barely visible. What is this? Rowan asked. A piece of an identification card, the coroner replied. Specifically, a correctional officer's ID badge. The room felt suddenly colder. Ghost hadn't gone quietly. He'd fought back.
Scratched someone.
Hard enough to tear part of their badge off. And that someone had manual strength to fracture his hyoid bone. Rowan's pulse thudded in her ears. Keller, the coroner asked. Rowan shook her head.
No.
Someone wants us to look at him. Someone who had access. Someone who could override cameras, kill lights, move through restricted areas. She left the morgue with the evidence bag in her hand. Outside, the fog had thickened, swallowing the streetlights. Rowan climbed into her car, her mind racing. She pulled up the Pelican Bay staff roster on her laptop. One name hovered every time she cross-referenced access levels, shifts during the blackout, and the officer who issued Keller the used uniforms. Lieutenant Grayson. He had been working that night. He had unrestricted access to electrical panels and surveillance feeds. He had a long-standing history with Ghost, disciplinary hearings, conflicts, attempts to isolate him. But another detail stood out. Grayson had been Bram's supervising officer the week Bram disappeared. Rowan exhaled slowly. This wasn't a single murder. This was a pattern. A cleanup operation. A purge. And then her phone buzzed again. A text message. Unknown number. No punctuation. No signature. Just 8 words. You're looking in the wrong direction. Check C block. Her heart lurched. C block wasn't where Ghost died. It was where Officer Bram was last seen. Rowan started the engine. The SHU wasn't done with its secrets. And when she stepped into C block, she'd learned that Ghost's death was only the beginning, and the truth was far darker than a staff conspiracy. Because one of the inmates in C block had been waiting to talk. Waiting for months. And he had Bram's missing ID badge hidden under his mattress. The moment Detective Leah Rowan stepped into C block, she felt the shift, the air heavier, the silence deeper, the eyes behind the steel doors tracking her. C block wasn't like the rest of the SHU. This was the graveyard of men who had seen too much, said too much, or knew something that made them dangerous to someone higher up. And tonight, one of them was expecting her. Inmate Elias Cortez, a thin, sharp-faced man in his late 40s, had been in solitary longer than most inmates survived mentally. Yet when Rowan approached his door, he looked disturbingly lucid. He was already standing, hands clasped behind his back, like he was awaiting a visitor he'd rehearsed for. "You got my message," Cortez said through the food port. Rowan kept her voice even. "How'd you get a phone in here?" Cortez smiled, a slow, unsettling grin. "Detective, phones aren't the hard thing to get. The hard thing is getting the truth out before someone buries it again." Rowan crouched to eye level. "Show me what you said you had." He slid something through the port. A thin card, chipped and cracked at the edges. Officer Bram's ID badge. The original. The one connected to a disappearance no one at Pelican Bay wanted to talk about. Rowan held it carefully. "Where did you get this?" Cortez leaned in until his face was half shadow, half smirk. "From Bram himself." That stopped her cold. "He's alive?" Rowan whispered. Cortez nodded once. "Alive 2 weeks ago. That was the last time I saw him."
How?
Rowan demanded. "He disappeared 6 months ago." Cortez lifted a bony finger and pointed to the vent high above his bed. "You ever wonder why the vents in this place echo? Why conversations travel? Why some cells hear things they shouldn't?" He paused. "Because the ducts aren't just ducts. They're tunnels, maintenance shafts, old access ports. Only a few staff know the full layout." Rowan's breath caught. Grayson would know. After 25 years, he'd know every inch. Cortez continued. "They move people through them. Sometimes to avoid cameras. Sometimes to make someone disappear without opening a door." Rowan felt the puzzle pieces locking together. Ghost's warning. "They're coming for me, but not through the door." The blackout. The manual strangulation. The vent evidence. "Why Bram?" Rowan asked. "Why take a correctional officer?" Cortez tapped the side of his head. "Bram found something. Something he wasn't supposed to. A ledger." Grayson had been coordinating things behind the scenes, informant networks, contraband routes, unofficial punishments. Bram tried to report it. Next day, poof. He snapped his fingers. "Gone." "And Ghost?" Rowan whispered. Cortez's expression darkened. Ghost got hold of the same information Bram discovered. And Ghost was planning to talk. He wasn't the monster they painted him as. He just knew too much. Rowan felt her chest tighten. "Where is Bram now?" she asked. Cortez pointed again to the vent. "If he's lucky, hiding in the old storage shaft on the north end. The kind even the cameras don't track. If he's unlucky, he let the sentence die." The implication hung in the stale air. Rowan stood abruptly. "I'm getting you out of this cell." Cortez laughed softly. "Detective, I'm not helping you because I think I'll get freedom. I'm helping because Bram saved my life once. I figure this is how I return the favor." He leaned closer. "But be careful. Grayson already knows you're poking around. He's not going to wait." As Rowan turned to leave, her phone buzzed. A new message. "No number. You should have stopped. Too late now." Her blood chilled. She signaled for backup. No response. The radios in this section were silent. Dead. That wasn't normal. The SHU lights shifted overhead. One flickered, then another. Rowan felt the same dread she'd felt when she watched the blackout on Ghost surveillance. Someone was controlling the grid. She rushed down the hallway, heading for the maintenance access door at the end of C block. If Bram was alive, that was where he'd be. She reached the steel door, swiped her temporary clearance card, and pushed through. A narrow space stretched ahead, smelling of dust, metal, and cold recycled air. Pipes lined the ceiling. The hum of ventilation echoed like distant whispers. Rowan moved forward slowly, flashlight cutting through the dark. Then she heard it. A faint sound. A cough. "Bram," she called. Silence. She edged toward the sound, rounding a corner. Her beam hit a shape slumped against the wall.
A man. Thin. Dirty.
Eyes squeezed shut. Rowan's heart leapt. Daniel Bram? His eyes fluttered open. He looked terrified. Don't. He tried to speak, voice hoarse from dehydration and disuse. Detective, you shouldn't be here. Rowan knelt. I'm here to get you out. No, Bram croaked, grabbing her sleeve with surprising strength.
You don't understand.
He's coming. Grayson, Rowan whispered. Bram nodded violently. He's been using these tunnels for years. The cameras don't see him. The logs don't track him. A metallic bang cut him off. A loud, echoing slam. Rowan whipped around. The door she'd entered through had been sealed from the outside, locking them in. Her pulse slammed against her ribs. She pulled Bram to his feet. We need to move now. They limped deeper into the shaft, following the faint blue emergency lights. Pipes rattled overhead. The air thinned. Every step felt like walking deeper into the lungs of the prison. Rowan could hear footsteps echoing behind them.
Slow.
Intentional. Grayson wasn't rushing.
He was hunting.
They reached a junction, the shaft splitting in two directions.
Bram strained to point left.
Old workshop. There's another exit. Rowan guided him that way, moving faster. The footsteps behind them sped up. Bram stumbled. Rowan hauled him upright. Then a voice echoed through the metal corridor.
Come.
Controlled. Familiar. Detective Rowan, Grayson called. You've done good work, but this is where your investigation ends. Rowan didn't respond. She pushed Bram forward. You think exposing me will fix anything? Grayson's voice bounced down the shaft. Pelican Bay runs on what people don't see, not what they do. Rowan reached the workshop door, rusted, half-broken. She shoved it open. Inside, old tools lay scattered. Wooden crates, dust thick as ash. And on the far wall, a hatch. Through there, Bram gasped. They crossed the room. Grayson's footsteps entered the doorway. Rowan looked back. He stood there, hands tucked into his utility belt, eyes cold. Not frantic. Not angry. Calculated. Detective, he said, you are supposed to leave this alone. Rowan raised her weapon. You strangled Ghost. You silenced Bram. And you used Keller as your scapegoat. Grayson's lips curled. The SHU has rules. Some men belong here. Some don't. Ghost and Bram were liabilities. And I'm next? Rowan asked. No, Grayson said softly. You're just in the way. He reached for his radio, not to call for help. To shut down the emergency lights. Rowan reacted first. She grabbed Bram, yanked the hatch open, and shoved him through. As Grayson moved toward her, Rowan slammed the hatch shut from inside, locking them into the crawl space beyond. They scrambled through the duct, Grayson's fists pounding the metal behind them. Finally, they dropped into a utility corridor, one monitored by cameras. One Grayson couldn't reach without being seen. Rowan exhaled shakily. I'll get you to safety, she told Bram. Then this entire place is coming down.
And it did.
In the weeks that followed, Rowan's investigation led to a full internal review. Grayson was arrested. Multiple staff were interrogated. Hidden access routes were sealed. Contraband operations exposed. Ghost's death was no longer a mystery, it was evidence. But the SHU didn't give up all its secrets.
Not all of them.
3 months later, as Rowan prepared for Bram's testimony, she received a package with no return address. Inside was a single object. A torn piece of fabric. A sleeve. Correctional officer uniform. But this time the name stitched inside wasn't Keller. It was Grayson.
And it was fresh.
Meaning someone had been close enough to pull it off him. Someone still inside Pelican Bay. Someone with access to the vents. A single note lay beneath it. The walls weren't lying. You just weren't listening. Rowan stared at it, a chill running through her spine. Pelican Bay had lost one monster, but another was already moving in the dark. If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.